Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of the Pursuit of Precision podcast. Today, we had the great opportunity to interview Andy Appleby, the founder and owner of the United Shore Professional Baseball League. In addition, he owns the stadium that this league participates out of called Jimmy John's Field. Unbelievable to hear the story of where he started out and how he was able to scale through his career. You're not going to want to miss anything that happens in this episode. Let's go check it out. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pursuit of Precision podcast. My name is Ryan Jaros, and over the next 12 months, I'm going to be interviewing 50 of the most successful, intelligent, influential, and ultimately happy people that I can in order to hear their story and share with all of you what I learn along the way. So today we had the pleasure of sitting down with Andy Appleby. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. We really appreciate it. Obviously, your time's super valuable, and we greatly appreciate your time being here.
Yep, love to be here.
Awesome. All right, so Andy, if you don't mind, I'm going to brag on you a little bit here because at the end of the day, this is going to be put out and seen by people that aren't just in the Michigan area or just around this Metro Detroit area as well, and we want to let them know kind of what you've done, where you're at now, kind of frame the picture of where you are, and then what I like to do is work backwards from there. So we start by painting the picture of where you are today, and then we'll go back to day one and kind of scale from there as quickly and efficiently as we can to kind of pick apart some things that you've done over your career. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
All right, very good. So currently, Andy serves as the CEO and the owner of General Sports Entertainment and the founder of Apple Tree Advisory. Through General Sports, they have owned and managed several successful professional teams across different leagues and sports. Most recently, Andy has created the United Shore Professional Baseball League right here in Utica, Michigan, actually. They play out of their beautiful $18 million local ballpark. This did not exist prior to Andy creating this, just so you guys all know. Andy earned a master's degree in sports management and a Bachelor of Science in English from Springfield College in Massachusetts. Andy is a husband to, is it Christiana? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Chris.
Yeah. Chris, you call her Chris. Okay, Chris. And a father to 4 children, 1 son and 3 daughters. So I always give the quick spark notes of this is who Andy is, or this is who whoever we're interviewing is. But I'd like to hear from you in regards to painting us a picture of what does Andy's day look like. You already told me about the million emails that you're going to receive the second you step out of here. So if you could just paint us a picture, and the reason I want to do this is so it kind of frames where you're at now, and I want to show with such contrast how far you've come.
Yeah, Ryan. So where I'm at now is sort of a compilation of all the various things that I've done in my career. I'm sure we'll get to the front of the career, which was an important step, particularly when I left the Detroit Pistons, which was not a simple decision back now 25 years ago. But today, you mentioned the USPBL and our beautiful ballpark, Jimmy John's Field, and certainly that is still is a large part of my week, particularly during the season when I go to almost all games. The only time I don't is if it's some kind of a trip or a wedding or something that takes me away. And then 4 years ago, we started a new sports agency. And this agency, although initially I was thinking it would be maybe 2 or 3 different divisions, it quickly developed into 5 divisions. And so now I really feel like I truly have several day jobs. I mean, literally 5-6 day jobs, because I really feel like I need to be a catalyst for all the various divisions of our company. And then, of course, a catalyst for our ballpark and our baseball league. So the interesting thing, though, is that, no one really ever gives me any sympathy or empathy, and for good reason, because I've been very fortunate in almost a 40-year career to be able to work in the toy department of life. And so, that is something.
You sound just like Tom, by the way.
Yeah, that is.
Sounds very similar.
I'm sure it is. Tom is a wonderful guy. But I mean, it is a great thing that, you get to work in sports, and it's all I ever wanted to do as a kid. I mean, gosh, I was a big sports fan, and I wanted to be, GM of the Red Sox as a kid growing up in New England, and found a way to make it my career. So very much of a privilege to get to work in this business. That said, one of the reasons that not everybody can be successful in this business, or I would say few people can be very successful in this business, is that it takes a lot of work and energy and effort to be in this business, because there's such competition, and particularly for some young people coming in, it's imperative for them to be able to work harder than the next person to be able to be successful. And I've got my own thoughts on that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so
if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to hear a little bit about your day. So why don't you walk us through, generalize, obviously. I'm sure there's things that come up that you have to pivot quite often, but paint us a picture in terms of what your day actually looks like. How do you frame out all these different businesses that you're responsible for?
In today's world, I'm not necessarily proud of it, but one kind of has to be on call almost 24/7.
Yeah.
The only time I'm not on call is when I go to bed. But that's, a 6 or 7 hour window where I'm not looking at my phone. All other times, you can't help it but to stay up with things. Even on the weekends, I get so many emails, and I'm somewhat guilty of giving out emails as well on the weekends, just because I just feel like my life is sort of 24/7 work to some extent. I come to work from my home in Bloomfield Hills, and typically go into the office at 8. And I'm there for, it depends. Sometimes if I have lunches or something on that side of town, I won't go into the office initially. But for the most part, I come here to Rochester every day and stay as late as I can. Sometimes, we have game days. I'll have to get to the ballpark at least by 5 o'clock. Or dinners back that way, or wherever I have to go for events and things. But for the most part, it's kind of an 8 to 8 day.
Okay. And are you blocking your times to specifically work on maybe ballpark stuff at a certain time, or is it just kind of putting out fires wherever they come up?
Yeah, I mean, certainly putting out fires, but again, I've not lost the zest to be a catalyst and to make things happen. And, I never really got out of practice with that from the days of starting at the Pistons, where, it was kind of imperative to be, 3 times better than everyone to move up.
Yeah.
And, I still feel that I have that kind of energy, and that, so I'm constantly really on the front foot of life, and, trying to make things happen versus just manage everything.
Living passively, yeah. Because I'm sure you could, but at the end of the day, it seems like that's why you're still doing what you're doing, because you're enjoying it. And
I am enjoying it, but again, someone once said about me, and I'm not sure I disagree, that that I need that life raft 5 feet farther than I can swim to really kind of push myself. And part of this is, and here it is 25 years later since I've left the Pistons, part of it is that feeling of, leaving one of the great jobs in sports, a fantastic life that I had, and working with Tom was a joy as well. You leave that type of a job and you feel like you better be the next Nike, or why'd you do such a stupid thing? So that continues to drive me to this day, despite all of the, great accomplishments along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give you credit. That's admirable that you could have stayed comfortable with where you were and kind of take I don't want to say a back seat, but at the end of the day, it's about the Pistons, right? Your name isn't what's on everything that gets put out necessarily. So it takes a lot of courage to step outside of that position and put your name and put your backing behind whatever you're going to put out next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, particularly in that case, because I had, having been there since 1986 and leaving in 1998, that 12-year period, I had a lot of accounts. So, it could have been even easier for me to coast along for the
100%.
next 20 or 30 years. And I think also, not that I was any kind of a born entrepreneur, far from that, but
Interesting.
with Tom being only 13 years older than me, and deservedly so, he wasn't going to leave there anytime soon, and he did not until much later, whatever that would have been, 13 or 14 years later. So I felt the only way to leave the Pistons was if I could somehow create that next great company. And, even today, I'm still chasing that.
That's good. That's good. I at the end of the day, I don't believe in sitting in a position where you're not chasing something. At the end of the day, that's what I think living really comes down to. So I respect it completely. But all right, so now we've kind of framed where you're at currently. And what I want to do is bring this down to a more relatable level for everybody that ultimately is going to be watching this,
Yep.
right? There's not many people that are in the position that you're at, and there could be a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid, 23-year-old kid that's just getting started and wants to feel like you were at ground zero too. So that's my first question that I always ask all my guests is if you could paint us a picture again now in detail, if you can, before all the nice houses, the cars, everything that I'm sure that you currently have, what was ground zero? What did that look like for you? Was that in college or was that before then?
I went to Springfield College. I was there on a wrestling scholarship, believe it or not, but I was there, and that was known, Springfield was known as the birthplace of basketball, Naismith, the Peach Basket Hall of Fame. But I went there for 4 years, and then there was a master's program in athletic administration, and I thought, I'll be an athletic director. But what I really wanted to do was work for a sports team, but back then we really didn't know what that meant or how to do it. And I got a letter that summer that just said that, hey, we're going to start a sports management program. And I thought, well, maybe this will get me a chance to be with a pro team. And worst case, I can always still be an athletic director. So I was the very first master's candidate at Springfield for the sports management. And because of that, there was an internship with, I did it in Washington with the old Capitol Center there. And so I did it sort of in PR during the day. And then at night, the hockey team there, at the time, I guess they're still called the Washington Capitals. They were open to having people telemarket. So and the internship, of course, wasn't paid. So I thought, I'll go and I'll sell tickets for the hockey team just across the hall. And that's what I did.
Interesting start.
And I had a lot of success.
Yeah.
But then I just kind of shot the resume to all the major sports teams. And the best offer came from the Pistons. Interestingly enough, it certainly had nothing to do monetarily. I just knew that the Palace would be built in a couple of years, and I figured, well, there'll be lots of jobs available there. Mm-hmm. And it did get me that, business card with a pro team. So,
yeah.
But coming here, I don't know what Tom would say, but you find out in about the third hour of the first day that, it's not enough to be just better than everyone or, one or two times better. But to really get noticed, you needed to be exceedingly better than everyone. Mm-hmm. And of course, the only way to do that is to put more effort and energy and time into it.
Yeah.
And the advantage I had, if you will, was that I wasn't married. I didn't have any friends here. Mm-hmm. And I was really, I wouldn't say one of the first because there was a little generation ahead of me that were maybe the first generation, but one of the first generation of this was what I went to college for. Prior to that, not many people went to school for sports management or whatever it is. And so, this is my job. I'm here to work. Mm-hmm. And, what else am I doing in Detroit, Michigan? And so because of that, I pretty much worked around the clock. And now one would argue that I might have been 3 times better than everyone, but it was mostly because I worked 3 times harder than everyone.
Or 3 times more just in general time.
Exactly. And so, like anything, like success always begets success, Ryan. You get noticed, you're bringing in lots of revenue, and then suddenly, I'm getting invited to all the parties and, whatever it might be. And, I got along really, really well from day one with Tom Wilson, of course. And he kind of, I don't know if he could say took me under his wing or anything, but certainly invited me to all the good events and things.
100%.
And I just really enjoyed working with him, all 12 years that we worked together, because he appreciated, the revenue generation as much or more than anybody I've ever met.
Yeah.
And of course, for me, I'm more about results driven. And so I felt, even though none of us went to college for sales, I felt it was in the end, a great opportunity for me, because it wasn't subjective. It was very objective. We don't always win the beauty contest, but if it's objective and it just means if you work a little bit harder, I find that to be an easy equation for me.
Yeah.
And also with that wrestling background of mine, Dan Gable once said, he's a famous wrestler, he said, after wrestling, everything else is easy. And it's true. There's almost nothing harder than wrestling. And so when it came to hard work, I always felt like that was something easy. In other words, Ryan, like, you and I, no matter what we did, we could practice night and day since the day we were born, and we're not going to play for the Pistons. Like there's just certain things like, we're not going to play for the Lions or the Vikings or, whoever, no matter what we did. But when it comes to work, and particularly sales, anytime there's an equation where I can see where if I just work harder, I can be more successful. Yeah. So
I can relate to that greatly.
So, even though, again, perfect world, I would have rather been the president of the team, coming out of college.
Yes.
The sales route actually was really good for me because, again, I could take all that subjectivity out of the equation.
Yeah.
And then no matter what, if you do well, you got to get promoted. You got to get big raises. It's just, and it really got to the point, as Tom would tell you, that like the last several negotiations of ours were not easy because it was like, I knew that I could go anywhere and be successful.
Yeah.
And so, but we always managed to agree to things. But at the same time, I had a lot of confidence, leaving the Pistons.
Yeah. And that brings up a number of different points that I want to touch on here. So the first one, to me, you said you would have loved to have been the president right off the rip. Where does that come from? At the end of my question that I had noted here actually is at what point did you decide or maybe understand that you wanted to have an abnormal life or something bigger or better than what you typically would see? Who inspired you? What drove that?
I think certainly Tom and working for Bill Davidson, and there's a point where you sort of idolize the president and the owner or whatever, and then there's another point where you're like, well, why couldn't I do that? And that point came probably sooner than later with me, but maybe not for 6 or 7 years.
Did that inclination start prior to even arriving at the Pistons? Did you have any of those thoughts even earlier on, maybe in college?
Well, I think everybody wanted to be president of the Red Sox or GM of the Red Sox or whatever it might be. I think we all sort of fantasize about that.
Okay.
But, when you're coming out of school, you have no idea how to do that or no idea how to be successful or how to get that job. But I was able to kind of put 2 and 2 together then.
Okay, and so I'll tie another question into this then. So at what point did you do something maybe outside your means or more than what you had thought you could do that opened your eyes to maybe there is more possible for me? Because you went from Fantasyland to I actually think I could do something special here.
Yeah, and or own teams, and that was really the impetus for leaving the Pistons, creating maybe that next great company, but also, looking to put together ownership groups, et cetera, and then run that team. And the first thing we did was we bought a minor league baseball team in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I had a lot of fun with that, a lot of success. We were like Team of the Year in 2003 and 2004, and which was really the genesis of eventually, building the ballpark in Utica and creating the baseball league. Because I just felt like it could be successful in this community.
Yeah.
And then we started a synthetic turf business. So we produced most of the high school and college football fields in the Midwest.
Nice.
From about 2005 to 2009. And then we sold out to the parent company of AstroTurf. And then just before that, we bought our first major league club, which was a premier soccer team in England called Derby County Football Club. And so I owned that team for 8 years with a sort of a star-studded group of investors. I was club chairman. I went to half the home games, Ryan, and it was sort of the toughest job I ever loved. Learned a ton over there, built tremendous relationships across the globe. Whereas prior to 2008, I had been, I've had built a lot of relationships, but they were all purely domestic, if you will.
Yeah.
And so all of that allowed me to think about this new sports agency when we decided to do it in 2020.
Okay. And you stack so many of these little things on top of each other. Was there a point where you started saying, like, you felt the momentum happening where it was like, I stack this, I'm like, wait a minute, I can do this, or I can do X and Y. Did you pay attention to that in your mind? Did you kind of keep score and say, hey, I can maybe do a little more, maybe I can do a little more? And what kept you driving forward?